Have you ever noticed this? Some people don't make a big deal out of their birthday. No countdown, no emotional posts. No, it's my special day energy. They wake up, they go about their routine, and the day passes, quietly. And here's the strange part. These people often feel different, calmer, more grounded, more self-aware. Not because they don't care, but because they don't need to prove anything. In a world that tells you every birthday must be celebrated loudly, that attention equals value, that being seen equals being important, there are people who step away from that script. This video is not about hating birthdays. It's not about rejecting joy or pretending you're above celebration. It's about a rare mindset most people don't recognize. Because it doesn't demand attention, it doesn't ask for validation, and it doesn't measure worth by applause. For some people, birthdays don't feel special in a performative way. They feel reflective, a quiet checkpoint, a moment of awareness instead of noise. And if you've ever felt slightly uncomfortable being the center of celebration, if the attention made you feel exposed rather than excited, if you've ever thought, why does this day feel like any other? There is nothing wrong with you. In fact, it may point to something most people never develop. An internal sense of value that doesn't rise or fall with recognition. So if you've ever treated your birthday like a normal day, not out of sadness, not out of bitterness, but out of inner balance, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you won't just understand this mindset. You'll understand yourself. Let's start with the obvious. Birthdays are not just personal milestones. They're social rituals, carefully shaped by culture, expectations, and comparison. From the time we're young, we're taught a script without realizing it. Your birthday is your day. You're supposed to feel special. Attention means you matter. Celebration proves your worth. So over time, the day stops being about life and starts being about response. How many people remembered how many messages came in before noon, who posted publicly, who stayed silent? And quietly, the birthday becomes a scoreboard, not of love, but of visibility. For many people, birthdays don't bring joy. They bring pressure. Pressure to feel grateful even if you don't. Pressure to act excited even if you're tired. Pressure to smile for photos that will disappear in 24 hours. Pressure to measure your importance through other people's behavior. And when the attention doesn't meet expectations, disappointment creeps in, resentment follows, self-doubt shows up uninvited. But here's the part most people never stop to question. Why should your value rise or fall based on how many people remember a date? Why should one day carry the weight of your entire sense of belonging? Because when that pressure disappears, when the expectations drop, when the need for validation loosens, something interesting happens. The day becomes lighter, quieter, more honest. There's no performance, no emotional checklist. No silent comparisons, just a day, a life, a person existing without needing proof. And that shift, from seeking validation to observing the ritual itself, is where a rare mindset begins to form. Most people never notice it, because it doesn't announce itself. It simply steps away. People who treat birthdays like normal days usually share one defining trait: inner validation. They don't need a calendar reminder to feel valuable. They don't wait for messages, posts, or celebrations to confirm their worth. Their sense of value comes from quieter places, from their principles, how they live when no one is watching, from their progress, how far they've come compared to who they used to be, from private standards, rules they hold themselves to, even when no one demands it. Because of that, they don't rely on a single day each year to feel seen. And that's rare. Most people, without realizing it, lean heavily on external validation, applause, recognition, public acknowledgement. It feels good, but it's unstable. One year the attention is loud, the next year it's quieter. And suddenly people start questioning their importance. But someone with internal validation doesn't experience that emotional swing. If people remember, they appreciate it. If people forget, they don't collapse. Because their self-worth doesn't live outside of them. They understand something deeply. Attention is a bonus, not a requirement. So when a birthday arrives, there's no emotional dependency attached to it. No internal checklist of who showed up. No silent disappointment over who didn't. They can enjoy a kind message without needing 10 more to feel complete. They can accept love without measuring it. And that creates a kind of calm confidence most people can feel, but can't explain. It's the confidence of someone who knows who they are, even in silence. Someone who doesn't need to be announced to exist. They still value connection. They still appreciate kindness. But they don't depend on it to feel whole. And that emotional independence, that ability to stand steady without applause, is what makes this mindset so uncommon and so powerful. Here's something subtle, yet powerful. Most people attach their identity to events. My birthday defines who I am today. This day should feel special. And if it doesn't, something must be wrong. So when the emotion doesn't match the expectation, confusion sets in. Disappointment follows, and people start questioning themselves instead of the belief. But people with this rare mindset don't outsource meaning to events. They understand something quietly powerful. A date doesn't upgrade your existence. You don't become more worthy because the calendar says so. You don't become less important because the day feels ordinary. Life to them isn't divided into important days and normal days. It's continuous. Growth doesn't pause until a birthday arrives. Reflection doesn't need an occasion to begin. And self-respect doesn't require a spotlight. They don't wait for symbolic moments to check in with themselves. They do it consistently, privately. That's why birthdays don't carry emotional weight for them. Not because they're indifferent, but because they're grounded. They understand that identity isn't something you put on for a day. It's something you live daily. So, if a birthday passes quietly, it doesn't threaten who they are. It doesn't create an internal crisis. It doesn't demand meaning where none is needed. They've already separated their sense of self from performance. And that separation is a sign of emotional maturity. Because emotionally mature people don't need life to feel dramatic, to feel meaningful. They can sit with ordinary days without labeling them as failures. They don't panic when nothing special happens. They don't force emotions to match expectations. They trust the long game of life. And when someone understands that who they are isn't defined by an event, they stop chasing moments and start building consistency. That's not detachment, that's clarity. This one matters more than people realize. Most people are chasing emotional highs, big reactions, surprises, celebrations, moments that spike excitement and temporarily silence discomfort. Because for many, stillness feels unfamiliar. But people who treat birthdays like normal days are often comfortable with emotional neutrality. They don't panic when a day feels calm. They don't rush to manufacture excitement. They don't assume something is wrong just because nothing feels intense. When their birthday arrives and the emotion feels balanced instead of euphoric, they don't question it. They don't think, why don't I feel excited? They don't think, why doesn't this feel special? They accept emotional balance as a healthy state, not a failure. And that tells us something important. They don't fear silence inside themselves. Many people avoid quiet moments because silence forces reflection. It brings unresolved thoughts to the surface. It exposes emotional gaps people would rather distract themselves from. So excitement becomes an escape. But someone who's comfortable with emotional neutrality isn't running from anything. They've already done the internal work. They filled the empty spaces with meaning, not noise, not validation, not constant stimulation. So a calm birthday doesn't feel empty to them. It feels stable. They understand that emotions don't need to be extreme to be real, that peace doesn't announce itself loudly, and that contentment often feels quiet. This mindset creates emotional regulation, the ability to experience life without being controlled by emotional swings. Highs don't define them, lows don't derail them. And in a world that constantly pushes people to feel more, this comfort with emotional neutrality becomes a form of strength. Because when you're at peace with calm, you stop needing life to entertain you. You start understanding it. Here's the difference most people completely miss. Many people live for moments. One day that has to feel special. One celebration that has to mean something. One post that proves the moment mattered. So life becomes a collection of emotional spikes, highs that fade quickly, followed by long stretches of waiting for the next one. But people with this rare mindset don't organize life around moments. They organize it around time, years, trajectories, direction. They don't ask, what did I get today? They ask, who am I becoming over time? That shift changes everything. A birthday to them isn't a reward for surviving another year. It's a quiet checkpoint, a moment to pause. Not to celebrate publicly, but to assess privately. Am I growing or repeating? Am I more disciplined than last year? Am I closer to the person I respect? There's no drama attached to these questions. No expectation that the day must feel emotional or symbolic. Just awareness. They understand that progress doesn't always show up dramatically. Most growth is invisible. Most change happens slowly, without applause. So they don't need a moment to feel meaningful for the year to matter. They trust the long arc of time. While others chase intensity, they invest in consistency. While others wait for occasions, they build direction. And that's why birthdays feel different to them. Not because they're indifferent, but because they're focused. Focused on momentum rather than memory, on evolution rather than events. They know a single day can't define a year, and a single celebration can't measure a life. So instead of asking for more attention on one date, they quietly commit to becoming better over many. That mindset doesn't look exciting on the surface, but over time, it compounds. Social rituals are powerful. They create shared meaning. They mark time. They give people an excuse to express care. But for emotionally secure people, social rituals are optional, not essential. People with this mindset don't reject birthdays out of bitterness or detachment. They're not avoiding celebration. They simply don't rely on rituals to feel connected to others. Their relationships aren't built on symbolic gestures that happen once a year. They're built on consistency, on depth, on mutual respect that shows up quietly over time. A message on a birthday is nice. but it's not proof of loyalty. Checking in when nothing is required, that's what they value. Being present when it's inconvenient, that's what they remember. So they don't count who showed up on a specific date. They remember who stayed across seasons, who answered the phone when there was no celebration, who showed support when there was nothing to post about. Because of that, birthdays don't carry emotional risk for them. They don't attach expectations to the ritual. They don't build emotional stories around silence. They don't interpret forgetting as rejection. And that mindset protects them from disappointment. Most disappointment comes from unspoken expectations, from assuming rituals mean more than they actually do, from hoping one day will reveal who truly cares. But people with low dependency on social rituals already know. They've observed patterns, not moments. They've paid attention to behavior, not dates. So if a birthday passes quietly, it doesn't change their perception of relationships. It doesn't shake their sense of belonging. They understand that connection isn't proven in a single gesture. It's revealed over time. And that understanding creates emotional stability. They don't feel less loved without ritual. They feel grounded without needing reassurance. That's not emotional distance. That's emotional security. Here's something many people avoid talking about. Birthdays remind us that time is moving. For some, that awareness triggers anxiety, comparison with others, regret over what hasn't happened yet. Age becomes something to fear, a reminder of missed chances or shrinking timelines. But people who treat birthdays like normal days often have a healthier relationship with aging. They don't see age as loss. They see it as accumulation, experience that sharpens judgment, clarity that reduces confusion, boundaries that protect energy. They don't romanticize youth as the peak of life. They respect evolution. To them, getting older doesn't mean becoming less relevant. It means becoming more selective, more intentional, more aligned. So a birthday doesn't feel dramatic or heavy. It doesn't trigger a crisis. It doesn't demand reflection fueled by panic. Because time isn't their enemy. They've made peace with it. They understand that growth isn't about racing the clock. It's about using it wisely. And when someone sees time as an ally instead of a threat, a birthday loses its emotional charge. It becomes just another marker along a long, meaningful path. Not a reminder of what's gone, but evidence of what's been built. That mindset brings calm, and calm over time becomes confidence. This is one of the rarest traits you'll encounter. People with this mindset don't confuse being celebrated with being valuable. They understand something most people never fully separate. Attention is temporary. Character is permanent. Applause fades. Posts disappear. Messages stop coming. But who you are, how you live, how you treat people, how you show up, stays. That's why they don't chase birthday posts or public acknowledgement. They don't measure love by visibility, and they don't feel wounded when someone forgets a date. Silence doesn't automatically register as rejection to them, because their self-worth doesn't live in other people's behavior. It isn't negotiable. It isn't up for review once a year. It doesn't rise with attention or fall without it. And people feel that, even if they can't explain why. Others sense the steadiness, the lack of emotional bargaining, the quiet confidence of someone who isn't asking to be chosen. This energy changes how people interact with them. There's less testing, less disrespect, less emotional manipulation. Because when someone doesn't depend on attention to feel valuable, they can't be easily shaken by its absence. That doesn't make them distant. It makes them grounded, and in a world where attention is constantly traded for worth, that kind of presence stands out, without ever trying to. Here's the irony most people miss. This mindset is often misunderstood. When someone doesn't make a big deal out of their birthday, people assume things that aren't true. They must be cold. They don't care. They're emotionally distant. But the reality is often the opposite. They care deeply. They just don't need constant proof. They don't require reminders to feel connected. They don't need public gestures to feel secure. They don't measure love through performance. They feel emotions fully. They just don't broadcast them. Instead of expressing everything outwardly, they regulate inwardly. They process before they react. They choose what deserves energy and what doesn't. And that restraint is often mistaken for detachment. In a world that rewards loud expression, quiet confidence feels unfamiliar. When someone doesn't announce their needs, people assume they don't have any. When someone doesn't demand attention, people assume they don't value connection. But what's really happening is emotional maturity. They know what they feel, they trust it, and they don't need it validated by an audience. So their calm can feel confusing to others. Their stability can feel distant. Their silence can be misread as indifference. But it's not a lack of emotion, it's control over it. And in a culture addicted to noise, that kind of quiet presence stands out, not because it's loud, but because it's rare. Let's be clear about something important. This mindset is not about hating birthdays, it's not about rejecting joy. And it's definitely not about acting superior or detached. That's a misunderstanding. At its core, this mindset is about choice. People with this perspective aren't anti-celebration. They can enjoy a dinner, a call, a quiet moment, or even a party if they want to. But the difference is this: they don't feel incomplete without it. Their happiness isn't scheduled. Their sense of worth isn't dependent on a ritual. Their emotional stability doesn't hinge on how one day unfolds, and that flexibility matters. Because emotional dependence creates pressure. Pressure to feel a certain way, pressure to perform gratitude, pressure to hide disappointment. But emotional independence removes that weight. They can accept joy without clinging to it. They can experience calm without labeling it as emptiness. They can celebrate without needing celebration to feel whole. That freedom is what makes this mindset rare. It allows people to move through life without forcing meaning into moments, without turning rituals into emotional tests, without tying self-worth to expectation. They're not suppressing emotion. They're choosing how and when to engage with it. And that ability to choose rather than react is the quiet strength behind this mindset. So if birthdays feel like just another day to you, that doesn't mean something is missing. It might mean something is settled, your sense of worth, your identity, your direction. You don't need a date on the calendar to remind you who you are. You don't need an audience to validate your existence. And you don't need a spotlight to feel grounded in your life. If this video described you, understand this: there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to explain your mindset to anyone. You don't need to justify your calm. You don't need to defend your silence. Just understand it. Because when self-worth is internal, it doesn't ask for permission. When identity is stable, it doesn't fluctuate with attention. And when direction is clear, it doesn't depend on celebration. This mindset isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. but people feel it. They respect it, often without knowing why. So if this resonated with you, comment "quiet confidence" below. Let it be a signal not to others, but to yourself. And subscribe, because in the next video we're breaking down why people with this mindset are often respected without ever trying to be.